To discuss this and lots of things, in fact, joining me is one of our panels, Independent MP for Fowler, Dai Le, and Labor Senator for South Australia, Marielle Smith. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Patricia.
Now, mandatory sentences, they're always contentious, so contentious, in fact, that in the Labor platform there is explicit opposition to them, and yet you've agreed to them after the Prime Minister very recently said it wasn't a good idea and it wouldn't work. Why did you give in at the end?
Because, Patricia, what we're seeing in this country is a massive increase in hatred on our streets, and communities in our country, particularly the Jewish community, feeling fearful and scared because of the amount of hate we're seeing. And I think community expectations are that we meet that with the strongest possible action, that we deter the people committing these crimes and that we hold them accountable. I'm comfortable with meeting that community expectation.
So you're comfortable with breaking Labor policy, essentially, or you know, the agreed to framework. It looks political because this crisis was going on 2 weeks ago.
I'm comfortable with doing what we have to do as a government to keep people safe and to restore confidence in the community. And I'm also comfortable with doing what we need to do as a parliament in the broadest possible consensus, stripping the politics out of this and saying we stand united against hatred in all its forms, and especially that we stand united against the hatred and the fear being experienced in so many communities around Australia. I think people in my party want us to take that action. They want us to be strong against hatred.
So the Labor not have resisted the mandatory sentences for so long then?
I think Labor Party stands against hatred in all its forms. It's the right thing to do to get legislation through in a consensus, as much of a consensus as possible, through this parliament, because the situation we have in Australia at the moment is untenable.
Dai Le, you did vote for the mandatory sentences, but there is a lot of evidence. I mean, the Law Council of Australia has come out, others saying that actually this is ineffective law. Did you listen to some of those groups who just said it's just not good practice?
I saw what the Law Society wrote in their media release. I think that and I would agree with the Senator, I think there's an increase in kind of incitement of violence in our community. And I think this is protecting the victims. Often when we talk about mandatory sentences, we're looking at the perpetrator, but I think this one is focusing on the victims and the impact of that having on the victims. So, you know, I've never seen so much hatred and increase in violence and protests, and I'm a refugee, migrated here, came here in the 70s, and there have been, you know, waves of migration to Australia, and Australia has been a very welcoming country. But I think what I've seen in the last 12 months has been very concerning, and this is minimum sentencing, and I hope that will deter those kind of behaviour in the community.
Now, I just kind of asked quite a few questions of Michael Sukkar, who's now Manager of Opposition Business, why the Coalition is pushing so hard for this independent inquiry into when the Prime Minister was briefed about this caravan, a potential attack that was ultimately thwarted. As we go to air this afternoon, the AFP, the Australian Federal Police Commissioner, Rhys Kershaw, is taking questions. No doubt he will be grilled about this and will bring people what he might say. Do you think there should be an independent inquiry, or is this just politics?
From my perspective, that whole incident was quite concerning, to find a caravan with that much explosives. And, you know, what does the Prime Minister know about that? You know, we know that people are quick to react and politicians are quick to react to situations like that. And I hope he was brief and that, you know, he gave us the information when he found out. And, you know, I'm a trusting person. I just, you know, I just believe what he said. You know, he's given us what he's been told. So we'll just wait and, you know.
Do you really think we need an inquiry? I mean, the Prime Minister argues.
I think
it's a waste of resources.
I think it's a waste of resources. But I think that the Prime Minister has to come to, you know, be upfront with the public in terms of what he knew when he knew it, and, you know. Yeah, all that information is about being upfront.
Marielle, why doesn't he just tell us, and then no one needs an inquiry, we could just find out from him?
Well, Patricia, what I want to see from our leaders is leaders who respect our intelligence agencies and our law enforcement agencies and let them do their jobs. That's the most critical thing here. I've worked in counter-terrorism policy before, countering violent extremism. I know how important it is that these agencies are able to do their work and able to carry out that work. And that doesn't mean a running commentary in the media where it's not appropriate.
But the point that Peter Dutton has made, which does have some merit as an argument, is that Chris Minns told us the date he was briefed, but the Prime Minister hasn't told us the date. So why is it such a big deal?
Well, the Prime Minister's being very, very clear that he's not going to comment on an investigation which is ongoing and respect the agencies involved in that. I think, unsurprisingly, Peter Dutton's seeking to politicise these issues. What we're saying as a Labor Party, it goes to the hate speech legislation and it goes to these issues. We want to strip the politics out of this and do what we need to do to keep our community safe and, importantly, make people feel more safe because they believe that we're doing the right thing, we're taking strong action and we're taking their fears seriously.
It feels like an election campaign, doesn't it, guys? Like, it feels like one, but we're not in one officially. One of the hints was just the carefulness of the Prime Minister when asked about Donald Trump's comments in relation to Gaza and the Riviera. The US has walked back some of those comments, but not, you know, basically we don't know really what his ultimate vision is or what it looks like. But Dai Le, you've talked about your concern for people from this region. Would you like the Prime Minister to be more upfront about the differences between our ideas and Donald Trump's?
Look, first of all, I think I felt that it was like a thought bubble from Donald Trump. He was just, you know, he'll stand there, he'll talk, and he'll make this big, it's a way of negotiation, and I think we've seen it with what he's done with Mexico and Canada in terms of tariffs. I think that what we see is real on television. Gaza is completely diminished. It's a rubble. And I think that as somebody who have experienced the bombing of Vietnam, I think the US has to play a role in rebuilding Gaza. And it's just, you know, and people have to have a safe haven.
Gazans?
I think for Gaza, for people coming back there, I mean, they're going back. If, like I said, if what we're seeing on the image on television is real, people are going back home. There's no home. Yeah. It's just rubble. So what role can the international community play in rebuilding that? So from that perspective, I think, you know, whatever Donald Trump is espousing on that world stage, I think the United States have to have a role to play to help rebuild.
Do you think we should contribute to rebuilding as well?
Well, you know, did we take part in the war? I mean, we took part in the war in Vietnam. I think that, and Australia has always maintained a two-state solution. So, and I think the Prime Minister did say that. And I believe in the two-state solutions as well. So I think, and it's such a complex issue as well. Yes. And for me, at this point in time, for Australians who are really concerned with their own cost of living, I think that's, for them, is a priority.
Yeah. Oh, it certainly is. Do you think there is a role for Australia in helping rebuild Gaza?
Well, I think there's a fair way to go in terms of the situation we have in the Middle East at the moment. We want to see full implementation of the ceasefire deal, and our view is, as it always has been, a two-state solution. Our foreign policy hasn't changed. We set our own foreign policy, and that's what we're focused on and in supporting those efforts.
Let me put this to you. What's the point of coming back to Parliament next week? What else does Labor need to get done?
Oh, we have a big agenda, Patricia. We have legislation.
Very specifically, not a list, but like obviously we're at the end of this sitting week.
Yep.
Why do you think there's any need to come back next week?
Well, just for a start, you know, we've got legislation before the Parliament which implements the robo-debt recommendations. We saw the devastating impact that had on Australians, and there's still more to go to implement that. We've got a bill before the Senate this week on that, including we've also got changes to Medicare. Like, our program is still quite hefty in the Senate. I don't know what these people in the House do, but we spend a lot of time working through
a lot of bills coming through the House of Rep as well. I can guarantee you.
Last time I checked, in high school politics, you do have to pass it through both houses.
Yes,
so both end up pretty big.
We do. I shouldn't diminish the important role of the House of Representatives. But we've still got a lot on our agenda and our plate in the Senate. And from my perspective, like, I won't miss an opportunity to come here, stand up for my state, and we've got a big choice at this election. This is an opportunity to highlight that, to get our legislation through and keep fighting for the things we've been fighting for as a government: stronger Medicare, better public education funding, and all the things which make our government, Labor government, doing good things.
It's funny, Dai Le, sometimes politicians get really like, oh, when's the election going to happen? But there is things the government's trying to do, childcare reforms, other plans it has. Do you think there's merit in trying to get as much work done
To me, trying to push so many pieces of legislation through in such a short period, no, it's not productive, because you're rushing through policies and legislations, and you don't have time to really, for me as an independent, to explore some of the, the issues that piece of legislation is being pushed through. So I think for the independents, if you speak to any of us, we find it really frustrating that the government just push through a whole slate of bills and will not give us time to actually look at it and actually, peel it back. So that is a problem. And yes, I mean, we feel that a lot of these should have been done last year, but, again, the end of last year, there was a huge slate of bills got pushed through. And I don't know if that's a very productive, to get something like done for the nation when you rush through bills. These are major pieces of legislation.
Mm. I'd love to just get your read before I say goodbye to both of you of the lay of the land in your electorates. Are you feeling like there's a mood for change, that there's a mood for change and booting up the government, which some people
there is some, in my door knocking from last year, I started door knocking last year, the mood in the electorate was that they were very frustrated with the Labor government in terms of the cost of living. And I've been kind of rabbiting about that constantly, about energy bills, insurance costs, grocery bills. And I found it really fascinating when I door knocked, and that's what the mood is, that people are just so frustrated. They've got mental health. They tell me they have to work 2 jobs in order to pay the bills. So if that is, if that's across other parts of Western Sydney, I don't know, but definitely in my electorate of Fowler, which is, in the heartland of Labor.
Is it going to be hard to hold on, given that's a sentiment, certainly in that part of Australia?
Look, every election's tough, Patricia, and we know that there's...
Some are tougher than others.
Yeah, of course. And, the Australian people are finding those cost of living pressures really, really hard at the moment, and that's why, as a government, that's our number one focus and priority through our measures like energy bill relief, tax cuts, everything we're doing to get wages up, to bring inflation down. In my community of South Australia, I'm spending most of my time in Sturt, where I live. I've got a great candidate there in Claire Clutterham, and when we're out talking to people, we're hearing that people are concerned about the healthcare system. They're worried about costs in the healthcare system. They're worried about what a Dutton government would mean in terms of cuts, and they don't know what that looks like. I mean, education and healthcare are critical to every single family. I think they know what they get with us, but at the moment there's a great big question mark over Peter Dutton and his plans and what that might look like.
Okay. Can I say about healthcare? I mean, I know that the government's spruiking that they've got increased Medicare rebate, but as we know, it's only for those who are under 16 and those with healthcare cards, the bulk billing. And so in my community, bulk billing is big. But there's been a reduction in bulk billing as well. So I think the government has to come clear and be honest about how much of that is going to benefit the middle Australians. So, yeah.
I think there's so much work to do in primary care. But
clearly
anyway.
A lot of work, and I've loved having you on the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Patricia.